Yeah, hello. My name is Jørgen Drejer. I'm the VD or CEO of Saniona. Thank you for staying along to the last company presentation this evening. Saniona is a Danish biotech company listed in Nasdaq small cap since last summer. My name, as I said, is Jørgen Drejer. I have been working in brain research for more than 30 years, and the company Saniona, the clinical programs in the company are focused on a small part of the brain, the reward center, and its disturbances in this reward center, craving, addiction, that we'll talk mainly about tonight. And that is some of the largest global economical burdens that we see today. And actually my first slide is I don't really know how this works. Here it comes, sorry. So my first slide is actually showing a very thick report from McKinsey talking about the worst global economical burdens, and this adds up to trillions of dollars, and it's all about craving, at least 3 of these. It's smoking, it's armed violence, it's obesity, and it's alcoholism. So it's craving for tobacco, for food, for alcohol. And then it's also the armed violence, which in many cases also is related to craving for drugs. So it's huge problems, and we think we have a way to treat this with some of the Saniona products. So I said it's about the reward system, and it's this little dot there in the brain, some part of the primitive brain that we can do very little about controlling. And we all want to get this reward all the time, to get a stimulation in the reward center, because that increases dopamine and that gives us pleasure. And sometimes this just goes bananas. You cannot control this. It can be addiction or craving or obsession about food, about sugar, chocolate. It can be alcohol, it can be tobacco, nicotine, but also drugs. And also in this stressful world, other addictions are coming on. The gaming, where you need to stay up all night to play, that is also increasing dopamine, and it's more or less an addiction. Also the social media mania, we could call it. You have to be on Facebook 24 hours a day. This is all about, we want to get this reward in stimulation in the reward center. As I said, very, very difficult to treat because it's a part of the primitive brain. We think we can do it with some of these unique products, Tesomet, Tesofensine, NS2359, because it works similar. It also works on the dopamine system, but in a very different way, very, very slowly and to a very low level. And our main product, Tesomet, is for several indications, but what we are focusing mainly on today is this obsession about food, which is extreme in some orphan indications. One is Prader-Willi, I'll talk more about later, a genetic disease, but also other diseases where you have disturbances in certain brain centers from after radiation of the brain, for instance. You can get this extreme obsession about food where you just eat so much that you can gain 10 kilograms in a week. We think these indications are very interesting for Saniona to go for because they are small, orphan indication, and we would potentially be able to go all the way to the market with these. But there are also some big indications here, like obesity, diabetes, which is some of the cards that's shown below the upper one in Prader-Willi. So Tesofensine is another product which is specifically developed for obesity, and specifically today in Mexico, where we have a partner, Medix. And they have just completed enrollment of the last patients in the last study in the development, and we expect them to report from that study by the end of the year or early next year. And that could be a product on the market quite soon. Also here I have put more cards in because there might be other geographies where this strategy could be relevant. So we are just waiting for royalties to kick in here within a few years. So the last 2359 is dedicated to cocaine addiction as it is right now, where we have phase 2 studies ongoing in USA. And again, there are other opportunities with that product in alcohol, in tobacco addiction, for instance. And we've been able to fund that whole program by grants, and potentially we could also get grants for the future development and potentially have a go-to-market strategy for that one as well. So Saniona is a specialized brain research company with a focus on treating craving and eating obsession, in particular in the orphan disease space. And we have these 3 clinical candidates. We have a broad platform of programs. I won't have time to talk much about that, but we've been able to commercialize these programs to a creative business model that has funded much of our activities so far. We've had a very low burn rate. And we've had partnerships with several big pharma companies, and this is also because we have a very high-ranking research team with more than 25 years experience in the research field. And also I think the management has proven that we have been able to make a number of deals. So this is the clinical pipeline shown in a more standardized way. The obesity program in phase 3, very close to the finish line. Tesomet in metabolic diseases in Prader-Willi syndrome, and also the cocaine addiction program lagging a little behind. Now I'll talk about how tesofensine actually works. Why is this so extremely effective as a weight loss drug? It is about craving first and foremost, and it's about this reward center. We can increase dopamine levels in the reward center and thereby reduce craving for food. But also it has an effect on the serotonin system, which is a closely related area, the appetite center. And here we can also reduce the appetite. And then finally it has an effect on the noradrenaline system, which increases the fat burn. So by these 3 different mechanisms, it is very, very effective. It also increases the heart rate. I can get back to that. Tesofensine was started in obesity many years back, some years back, and showed a remarkable weight reduction in this study. And it was published in Lancet, which is one of the most esteemed medical journals. We saw a weight loss of around 12.6% or 11 in the next dose range at the highest dose levels. And that is really remarkable. The adverse effects were very similar to placebo, and it has also been studied in now close to 2,000 patients and volunteers, a very well-tolerated drug. But with this increase in the heart rate I mentioned. This was now compared to other compounds that's on the market in the obesity field, Cosumia, Victoza, Saxenda, Contrave, and so on, which gives much less weight loss. And the tesofensine study was just on a half-a-year treatment, whereas the others were 1 or 2 years of treatment. But it was actually extended, the study, as an open-label study, now down to about 1 year of treatment. And now we get down to about 14% of weight loss. Really remarkable. But it's not tesofensine that we want to develop internally in Saniona. It's the combination product Tesomet. We have a completely new patent estate on that, and also we have a compound, a product there that is devoid of the increase in heart rate. It's a cardiovascular neutral drug. We have shown that in diabetic patients in the study. And as I said, we are mainly focusing our internal resources on the eating disorder field, which is the Prader-Willi syndrome I'll talk more about, and also this hypothalamic obesity, where you have usually it's because you've had a benign cancer in the brain, you have an operation or radiation, and then you disturb the appetite center. And this can lead to extreme obsession about food and weight gain. So actually very similar to what we see in Prader-Willi. Both of these diseases are orphan diseases, rare diseases, but still with a very nice market opportunity. Then there is the binge eating, which especially in the US is a major problem, where you get these episodes. You need to eat and eat and eat, maybe 20 hamburgers within half an hour. This is really only treated today with one drug, an amphetamine-like drug. We think there's a very interesting opportunity there. And of course, the more broad opportunities in the metabolic disease area, it's in obesity and consequences of obesity, which is diabetes, it's fatty liver. And as I said, we did a study in type 2 diabetics, and we think there's a very nice opportunity there. But this area is just too big for us to internally run in Saniona. We can do the next phase 2 study, but then we'd need a partner. Whereas in the eating disorder field, we would potentially be able to go all the way. So a little bit about more about the Tesomet opportunity here in Prader-Willi. As I said, this is a rare genetic disorder, a specific deletion in a chromosome, and then you get this extreme hunger, and some of these patients get very, very big. And it's not the main problem that they get big, although this can also lead to diabetes and other things. But the problem is that they cannot live a normal life. They cannot go outside the door because they would eat anything they find on the street. And it's really, really frustrating for the patient, for the parents, this obsession about food. There's no effective treatment of that condition today. It comes already in the childhood, and then it gets worse, and also there's usually some behavioral problems that gets more serious in adulthood. But it's really a disease already in the childhood. We decided to evaluate this indication and did a small exploratory study in adult patients first, and with the aim to go into children afterwards. And we opened that study just a couple of months ago, an interim analysis after this adult part of the study. And we found, as expected, a very nice weight loss in the study. But even more remarkably, we saw a dramatic decrease in what's called hyperphagia, or the obsession about food. And that is actually shown in this figure. It's a score going upwards, combining many different questionnaires on hyperphagia. And it's about the same in placebo and in the treatment group. But during the treatment, the treated patients completely lost their hyperphagia, whereas with placebo it stayed at around the same level. So apparently we are able in this patient population to get them out of their main disease, the hyperphagia. And we are currently evaluating how to continue this study into teenagers. And we also found out in the study that we should use lower doses of tesofensine in Prader-Willi patients that we use in the other indications. But Prader-Willi is a very interesting market potential, and also hypothalamic obesity, binge eating. And we actually did not need to do all the calculations ourselves, because there's been a company in front of us, a company called Safgene, that also had an effective weight loss drug. They had to give up the drug in late development, but it actually was developed quite rationally into these indications, and the company had a market cap of in excess of $1 billion at some point in time. And that's based on these analysis reports on these indications, and it was due to the pricing in these indications and mainly based on the US market that you reach about $1 billion sales potential with these. As I said, binge eating, only one product on the market today, that's Vyvanse from Shire, and it's an amphetamine drug which has a lot of concerns, we think we can do much better with Tesomet. Here an estimated market potential of 5 billion. So where are we today? We are doing a lot of, I would say, boring thing. We have made the tablet of a Tesomet. We have done talks in combination talks with these two drugs, and we are doing some other evaluations on how this tablet is taken up and delivered to the body, and also to find the optimal dose of metropolone. That should end by the end of the year, and then we should be able to go into the real interesting phase 2b studies in the eating disorders field, and in parallel we'll do a phase 2 study in obesity. In the Prader-Willi area, as I mentioned, we have done the first exploratory study in adults, and now we want to continue this into teenagers. So about tesofensine, which is specific for the Mexican market, and we are focusing just on obesity. And that's not only a major problem in Mexico, in the US, it's certainly also in Denmark and here in Sweden. This is a recent newspaper story from Expressen. And it really focuses not just on that we get bigger and bigger, but it focuses on this problem that people cannot stop eating if they have this obsession about food. And it is really, really difficult or impossible to get out of that condition. You need help for that, because it's this primitive part of the brain that you cannot control. And of course, you know very well, this is one of the biggest risk factors in Sweden. Mere end hälften af befolkningen har overvægt eller fedme, and 70 billion costs a year, and it leads to early deaths and diabetes, so on. It's really something that we all should be concerned about trying to treat. So the Mexican study is very similar to the study I showed before from Lancet, and it's on 372 patients. As I said, they have all been enrolled now, and what we are looking for is mainly weight loss, but also some other parameters. The Mexican market is very big today, $250 million US. And our partner in Mexico, Medix, is the market leader in that area, and it's with very old products. We think there's a very good opportunity to do better with tesofensine. So the prevalence very high in Mexico. Now to the cocaine addiction program. As I said, also there we could potentially go to market ourselves. And the principle here is the same. It's a different compound, but what it does is that it slightly and slowly increases levels of dopamine in this reward center. And that's illustrated here by the blue curve. So actually you normalize these patients that have too low dopamine in that center. It, in principle, works on the same binding sites as cocaine, but cocaine does something very differently, because it increases the dopamine level very rapidly. You get the euphoria, and then you get the crash, and you get down to very low dopamine levels, and this is where the withdrawal comes in, because you really need stimulations to get back at this level. But if we have a 2359 on board, it binds very effectively to this side. Cocaine should not be able to get there, and also you shouldn't need the stimulation. That's the principle, and actually we have some data to support that already. We should reduce the withdrawal, the craving, the euphoria. It's a big issue, as you are well aware, in the US and many other places, and estimated market of around 1.2 billion. The study that we are running today together with our collaborators in at Penn University in Philadelphia is on 80 cocaine addicts, and it's 8 weeks of treatment. And what they're looking for is that they actually don't take cocaine the last 2 weeks of treatment. And then they measure also alcohol and smoking we get in the same study. The study has been running for quite some time now, and it is an academic study, so therefore it is slower than if we had run it ourselves, and we have been a little disappointed about the recruitment rate lately. We had hoped that they actually could do an interim study now, but it will take at least 3 months more before they are there. But I spoke with the investigators just about a week ago, and they are still thinking that the recruitment will be sufficient to get the interim analysis this summer. So that was all about the clinical programs, and now I'll talk a little bit about the preclinical pipeline, because Saniona actually has a very, very strong technology base and a research team. And based on these programs out of our ion channel team, we have made many partnerships in the past and also have many current partnerships. So this is much earlier, this is still preclinical, but it's now getting into the clinic. So one program is with Cadent, a spin-out company that we made in a neurological disease called ataxia. We have a program here, and they're going into the clinic very soon. We have a program here in pain, we've just selected the candidate, and it's in preclinical development. We have a collaboration with Boehringer Ingelheim in the schizophrenia field, where we got upfront payment and get payment for the research we make. We have a program in inflammation, in colitis, where we're also close to selecting of the candidate. Collaboration with a company called Proximedian in the neurology field, and then Parkinson program, where we are funded by Michael J. Fox Foundation. And all these programs, while they are early, they are very important for our long-term growth perspective, and also they've been very important for actually financing our company in the first years in keeping a low burn rate. I'll just talk about one of these programs, and it's the GABA program, and it will be very briefly. It's a completely new principle for treatment of pain, and especially this neuropathic pain, where there's very little or very bad treatment today. Only about 50% get a partial response. The rest don't get any help. And as I said, a completely new principle based on one of these ion channels called the GABA channel. It works almost as good as morphine in an experimental pain model in rats. And what you can see here is just after acute dosing, this is morphine, and the higher you get up, the more pain relief you have had. And this is 3 different doses of our compound, which also give a very good pain relief. But that's not the interesting part of it. It is actually when you look at the same 1 week later, because now morphine has completely lost its activity. And that's also what you see in the clinic. You get tolerance development, and then you cannot use morphine anymore. You try to go up in doses, but very soon you lose the effect of morphine. But this principle, we've shown that in several respects, actually shows no tolerance development. You still have the pain activity also later. So a completely new principle for treatment of pain. Now, getting towards the end, I'll just talk about what we have accomplished since 2012 when we made the company. We have several research programs that we've initiated. We have put compounds into phase 2 in diabetes, in Prader-Willi, and now we are taking this compound into the pain field. And this is really where we see this being the main value driver for the company. But on top of that, we made a number of partnerships over the years with some of the biggest players in the field, with Janssen, with Pfizer, with Boehringer Ingelheim, and also this interesting deal with Medix for tesofensine. In addition to that, we have programs which we call free ride programs, where we actually have all the rights, but we have everything paid for by our partners or by grants. which is grants to Penn University, and here Michael J. Fox Foundation. We made a number of spin-outs, 3. One was Caden, I mentioned, they're going into the clinic soon. Initiator Pharma listed on Aktiedagen, and Scandion currently in financing mode. So I think we have been able to build the company in different directions, but with a strong focus on the internal programs for our own value generation. So, the summary slide. We have a go-to-market strategy for Tesomet and 2359. Interesting opportunity with tesofensine, and additional in the metabolic field where we could make partnerships. We have made a number of partnerships, spin-outs, and we have had a very strong news flow in the last 2 months. I think we have had 8 all positive press releases, and now in the coming months we see the results of the medics coming up, initiation of more studies on Tesomet, and also into the eating disorders field, interim data for 2359, and or potentially new deals with the ion channel programs. So probably don't have time to go into the figures, and it's suffice it to say we've been able to generate good revenue every year from these partnerships, and therefore we've been able to maintain a very low burn rate. These are some of the key people, and I just mentioned that we just got 2 new board members in, and a young who's working in Moberg Pharma, is a very nice addition to the company from a financial point of view. She's heading the audit committee, and Don DeBattisi with a very international perspective. He is a US individual, and he was CEO of a US company called Targacept listed at NASDAQ, so he can give a more international perspective into Saniona. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Thomas. That was very effective of you, I would say. I must say that you've had quite a dramatic time at the stock market recently. I know you're not the person to analyze, but could you give me some comment on what happened since your stock fell so much since November last year? What's your reflection?
No, I think this is for the market to describe what happened. I think we had a release in November, I think it was, on that we would make this interim analysis in the Prader-Willi study. And that was perceived as a very negative message. We thought it was a neutral message, and when we could then open the data in January, we think we proved it to be a very positive message. But this is how the market sometimes reacts, and yeah. I do not want to speculate about that.
No, of course. We see this quite often in the small cap, in the smaller companies. They are quite sensitive to changes. But can you see that there is anything at all that you could do in order to avoid the similar stock falls in the future?
No, I think the only thing we can do is, of course, to run the business and be moving the programs as we think we generate most value in them. And then, of course, to be in places like this and talk to our investors. We are very pleased to have that opportunity. A dialogue and information to the investors, I think, is important.
Okay, yes, thank you. Do you have any questions from the audience? We have quite short of time here, but not really. If we talk a little bit more about the owners, your ownership structure seems quite impressive. I must say you have quite a few institutional owners. Can you describe a little bit about the structure?
I can do that. Actually, I don't see us being very heavy on the institutional investor side. We've actually spent quite some time on the road in Europe and US to get more institutional professional investors into the company. Today we are mainly funded by private investors and like...
Yeah, but also some banks and some pension companies there at the list anyway. So
yes, yeah. But I think it's important for us to get more institutional investors in and more long-term professional specialist investors into the company. We have spent quite some time on that.
Yeah, I have just one question. Please give me a short answer. There are already quite a lot of drugs that works on ion channels. We know sleeping drugs and everything. How does your how will your products differ from those one that we already know that are existing on the market? What's
Yeah,
the big
it's
difference?
about subtype selectivity. That's a complicated thing, but these channels, they come in many different versions, and the traditional drugs just work similarly on all of this, and therefore gives both a lot of effects but also a lot of side effects. We can dedicate our drugs to just work on very small types of these ion channels that are just present in one specific organ, one specific brain area, and therefore we can get extremely specific effects and avoid the side effects. And that is also why these companies make partnerships with us, because they can see we are really first movers in this field.
Yes. So let's wish you very good luck in this important work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.